Well, folks, this is how you know it's bad, because when the media turns on you, that's politics. When your voters turn on you, well, that's frustration. But when your own people turn on you, that's panic. Tonight, we're talking about Chicago, and what you're about to hear did not come from Republicans, not from Trump, not from conservative media. It came from inside City Hall. Brandon Johnson is being exposed by the very staff and officials who were supposed to protect him. They're breaking ranks, they're leaking numbers, they're telling the truth out loud because, let's just be honest, the math no longer lies and the streets no longer cooperate. Crime is surging, businesses are fleeing, downtown is hollowing out, and now the plan meant to save Chicago is collapsing under its own weight as aldermen revolt and residents snap. People are afraid to walk their dogs at night, but they're also somehow, some way expected to pay more. Homeowners are opening tax bills that they can't afford. Meanwhile, they're being told everything's fine. And insiders are quietly admitting what City Hall won't say publicly. The city is at a breaking point. And so, well, guys, this is December 2025 and Donald Trump is back in the White House. Cities are competing again, and Chicago's losing badly. And tonight, we're going to go ahead and show you exactly why the mayor's own team is running for cover before the whole thing collapses. Stick with me because it only gets worse from here. Hit the like button and subscribe. All right, so this is where everything changes, because what's happening right now in Chicago, this is not coming from outside enemies. It's actually coming from inside the building. The city treasurer, internal officials, people whose jobs depend on system functioning, yeah, they're openly contradicting Brandon Johnson on crime, on taxes, on the city's financial health. And they're not doing it because they suddenly found religion or switched parties. They're actually doing it because the numbers are undeniable. Now, this isn't Trump. This isn't Republicans. This isn't conservative media. This is your people. This is your folks saying, we can't keep lying for you, Brandon Johnson. And so this is the most dangerous moment for any mayor, when insiders stop protecting the narrative and they start protecting themselves, because betrayal like this isn't ideological. This is clearly survival. And so, it's people quietly stepping away from this blast radius before everything caves in. When staff breaks ranks, it's not a debate anymore. This is an alarm being pulled. And so now let's talk about the lie that finally collapsed. The idea that Chicago is safer than ever, because fear doesn't care about press conferences. Residents aren't watching crime statistics. They're watching their backs. People are afraid to walk their dogs at night. They're afraid to wear jewelry. They're afraid to park downtown. They're afraid to let their kids ride the train. And when fear becomes routine, no slogan's going to be able to save you. And we've seen daylight crime, mass shootings, disorder in places that were once untouchable. And yet City Hall keeps insisting everything's under control, as if repeating it time and time again enough times makes it true. Now, here's the problem, guys. Here's the real dilemma. Fear doesn't need a press conference. It doesn't need a press release. You just feel it or you don't. And right now, Chicago feels it everywhere. And once that disconnect sets in between lived reality and official messaging, the trust is gone. And when trust is gone, revolt isn't that far behind. Now, before we move on, I do want to pause for a second, because what's happening in Chicago with crime and taxes, this is the same kind of blindside that a lot of people experience with Medicare. Now, a couple saved up for a small vacation, nothing fancy, just something to look forward to, right? A weekend getaway. Then a surprise medical bill showed up because their Medicare plan didn't cover what they assumed it did. Overnight, that trip was gone. The husband told me we needed that trip more than the doctor did. That's what coverage gaps do. They steal peace quietly. This is why I partner with Chapter. They don't sell you plans. They inspect them for free for the Ron Yates community. They check every corner of your Medicare coverage so that surprises like this don't wipe out the things you worked hard for. Now, most people, they're already dialing the phone number right there on your screen, 909-563-8279, or they're visiting askchapter.org/Ron. All right, but let's get back to Chicago, because that same sense of betrayal, this is exactly what pushed residents over the edge, because fear alone didn't do this. Crime alone didn't do this. Taxes alone didn't do this. This was everything at once. Crime rising, groceries up, rent is up, property taxes exploding. And then City Hall has the nerve to say, oh, you're doing great. That's when people snap. That's the gaslighting I'm talking about, guys. There's a simple rule in politics. People can tolerate pain, but they cannot tolerate disrespect. Am I right? And what Chicago residents feel right now isn't just financial pressure. It's insult layered on top of injury. I mean, you open a tax bill you can't afford. You're afraid to walk outside at night. And then you're told that this is progress. This is not political anymore. This is personal. This is why the backlash got louder. This is why people who never cared about city politics suddenly care a lot about city politics, because this isn't about ideology. It's about survival now. And when survival is threatened, silence ends. And then came the plan that poured gasoline on the entire fire. The so-called solution meant to save Chicago. The revived corporate head tax. Yeah, the revived corporate head tax. Let me tell you about this, guys. City Hall pitched it as fairness. Businesses saw it as punishment, because when your city is already bleeding jobs, taxing the remaining employers isn't leadership, it's desperation. Even worse, the mayor's own allies knew it. Aldermen started pushing back quietly at first, but then publicly, because they already understand something that City Hall refuses to admit. You cannot tax confidence into existence. This wasn't partnership. This was extraction. Chicago isn't fixing what's broken. It's taxing what's left. And insiders know it. This is why the cracks widened. This is why resistance grew. Because once businesses decide that a city is hostile, they don't argue. They just pack their bags and they leave. And this is exactly what started happening next. And so this is the part most people miss, because business collapse doesn't usually come with sirens. It starts quietly. Office floors go dark. The for lease signs stay up a little bit longer. Hotels sell for fractions of what they were worth just a few years ago. Downtown Chicago didn't empty overnight. It bled out. And by the time it became obvious, the damage was already done. Businesses don't hold press conferences when they lose confidence in a city. They just update their spreadsheets, they move meetings, and they relocate jobs. That's it. And under President Trump, the contrast is brutal. Red states are competing aggressively for capital, talent, and headquarters. Taxes predictable, crime enforced, rules are clear. Chicago, different story. Chicago made itself expensive, hostile, and unsafe all at the same time. And so once a business leaves, it doesn't just take the jobs. It takes tax revenue, foot traffic, and stability right along with it. Which kind of brings us to who ended up holding the bag. So, because when businesses stop paying, someone else always does. And in Chicago, that someone was homeowners. That's right, folks. People open their mail to find property tax bills doubling. Now, in some cases, homeowners were paying more in taxes than their actual mortgage, which is crazy to think about. Can you imagine your property taxes cost you more than your mortgage? One-bedroom condos suddenly costing thousands a month just to exist. Now, at that point, owning a home stopped making sense. Renting became cheaper, leaving became rational, and here's the betrayal. Residents weren't prepared. Notices came late. Increases came fast. There was no cushion. There was no warning, no adjustment, period. Just shock. Now, that wasn't abstract policy anymore. That was kitchen table math. Families sitting down, running the numbers, and realizing Chicago no longer worked for them. And once residents started asking, why am I paying this much for this? Loyalty disappears. Now, here's the part City Hall hopes you never slow down enough to notice: the math. So when Chicago's commercial tax collapsed, the bills didn't disappear, they shifted. Office buildings emptied, hotels lost value, major properties paid less, and the gap, it landed squarely on the people who couldn't leave overnight. Homeowners. This wasn't ideology. This wasn't racism. This wasn't conspiracy. It was arithmetic. Someone always pays. And when businesses stop contributing, residents, they get squeezed. That's why the pain felt uneven. Neighborhoods still hanging on, they got hit the hardest. People who stayed weren't punished for staying, and the message was clear. Even if it wasn't said out loud, if you're still here, you're the fallback plan. This is when anger turned into something else, because once people started realizing that they're being used to prop up a failing system, trust doesn't just erode, it collapses. So this is where the betrayal finally surfaces, because once the numbers became undeniable, City Hall, they started fracturing from the inside. Aldermen began pushing back, not quietly, not anonymously, but on record. Staffers started leaking concerns. Officials stopped defending policies that they knew couldn't survive daylight. This wasn't rebellion out of principle. This was self-preservation. Nobody wants to be the last person holding the mayor's talking points when the receipts come out. So they started distancing themselves carefully, strategically, publicly enough to be noticed. And this is when the mayor's isolation became obvious. When even allies start creating space between themselves and your agenda, leadership turns into liability. Now, at that point, it's not about winning arguments. It's about who gets blamed when the fallout lands. So then came the moment that everything, this is really the moment that made everything spin. The tax notices didn't just arrive high. They arrived late. Months late. Homeowners were given weeks to absorb massive increases that they should have had months to prepare for. And the reason wasn't some natural disaster or emergency. It was just incompetence. A private vendor was paid up front, millions of dollars, by the way. No real penalty for failure, no parallel systems running, no backup plan, just a broken system and residents left holding the bill. This is where the trust finally snapped. Because when government tells you to do better while it can't even manage some basic operations, people stop believing anything else that they say. A monopoly that never faces consequences will always spend money recklessly because it already knows that the money just keeps on coming. And in Chicago, that failure didn't stay abstract. It showed up in the mailboxes, on kitchen tables, in panic. Chicago has survived scandals before. That's nothing new. Crime waves before, budget fights before, but this one's different because this isn't one crisis. It's all of them at one time. Crime rising, taxes exploding, businesses leaving, systems failing, and now insiders panicking. Normally, political crises stay contained. You fight crime, or you fix finances, or you manage optics. You do something like that, right? Chicago is failing on all fronts simultaneously, and the people inside City Hall know it. This is why the tone has changed. That's why officials are speaking more carefully. This is why betrayal feels sharper. There's no buffer left. When a city loses safety, affordability, and credibility at the same time, it stops being a policy debate and starts becoming a countdown. And this is what Chicago feels like right now, a city running out of time. And this is why timing matters. It's December 2025. Donald Trump's back in the White House. Cities across the country are competing again for businesses, for families, for investments. Red states are advertising safety, predictable taxes, and growth. They're saying, look, come here, we want you. Chicago is doing the exact opposite. While other cities stabilize, Chicago is squeezing what remains. While others rebuild trust, Chicago is losing it. And insiders, they see the comparison every day. Capital doesn't argue, it relocates. This isn't destiny, it's a choice. Nothing about Chicago's geography changed. Nothing about its people changed. What changed was leadership and the refusal to adapt to a national environment that now rewards competence instead of excuses. Yeah. And so when the country is moving forward and your city is standing still, the gap becomes impossible to hide. And this kind of brings us to the moment that defines this entire story. When even allies stop defending you, oh, it's over. Brandon Johnson isn't just facing criticism, he's facing isolation. Staff is breaking ranks, aldermen creating distance, officials speaking carefully not to protect the mayor, but to protect themselves. That is the real betrayal. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet abandonment. And the city feels it because when leadership loses the confidence of its own people, residents lose whatever patience they had left. What comes next isn't reform, it's fallout. More exits, more anger, more reckoning. So the question isn't whether Chicago has reached a breaking point. The question is, who's still pretending it hasn't? So let me know what you guys think. Like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.